because this was the first of a kind. You should touch the topic and leave it. तुझे ना class per class आपे चाहिए. It's going to.
I think everybody knows Radhika Raman Prabhu, but just in case some of you are newer and you don't know him, a very, very brief background about Prabhuji, and then we'll get started. So Radhika Raman Prabhu is also known as Ravi Gupta. He's a notable Vaishnava scholar. He's presently at Utah State, chair of the Department of Religious Studies there. Previously, he was in College of William and Mary in Virginia, he's also a member of the Bhaktivedanta College. He received his doctorate from Oxford University on the topic of Jiva Goswami's Vedanta and has a postdoctoral fellowship from the Linnaea College. He grew up in Boise, Idaho, where he was homeschooled by his parents using Srimad Bhagavatam. In 2008, he met with Pope Benedict XVI and presented him a gift on the behalf of the whole American Hindu community. He's a disciple of His Holiness Hanumat Prekshak Swami. So we're very honored and happy to have Prabhuji here once again with us on this Sangha and eagerly awaiting to hear from him. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome all of the devotees from Austin, as well as Columbus, as well as Richmond, as well as all the other various places that are joining us today. It's so nice to have you all in this Sangha. Upcoming tomorrow, we have His Grace Adi Gadadhar Prabhu, who is also speaking from Atlanta. He's a doctor treating the older patients in Atlanta. He's also a very, very realized, knowledgeable speaker. He's been on before on our Sangha and was repeatedly requested to come on again, so he's agreed to come on again. Then Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we have His Holiness Jayadaj Swami, who is here with us today right now also, speaking from Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Tuesday and Thursday, we have other speakers. So this Tuesday, we have His Grace Devkinandan Prabhu from Chowpatty Temple, from Juhu Temple, sorry. And who do we have on Thursday? Thursday, I think we have His Holiness Purushottam Maharaj from Mayapur. And then Saturday, yeah, okay. So we'll give you more announcements later, but we have a lineup of good speakers coming up. So please join us regularly.
Amarendra Prabhu, and next Saturday is Sachinandan Swami.
Yes, okay.
During the day.
Yes, I mixed up my Thursdays.
And so next Saturday at 1 p.m. Sachinandan Swami. So just to give you an idea of the lineup. Yeah.
You should have it there.
Yes, yeah. So please, Radhika Raman Prabhu, we request you to go ahead.
So thank you so much for that kind introduction. My obeisances and greetings to all the devotees who are here. I think Nilamani Prabhu mentioned some of the temples devotees are visiting from today. There's a few more, I think, but I want to especially offer my respects to Jayadvaita Maharaj and to other senior Vaishnavas who are present. Thank you for this opportunity to say a few words. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I thought I would start by reading a verse from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is chapter 4, called Hiranyakashipu Terrorizes the Universe. The topic of today's talk, as you may have heard already, is called Prayer in a Time of Crisis. And it's, well, I guess it's a follow-up to last time's talk, which was on faith in a time of crisis. So faith in a time of crisis, today's prayer in a time of crisis. And then I think on May 10th, if I'm not mistaken, I'm speaking again, that's a Sunday. And I thought for that one, we would do something a little bit more practical, so to speak. Well, faith and prayer are practical, but still physical maybe, and talk about service or seva in a time of crisis. So Anyway, trying to keep a theme going. But here we've got Canto 7, Chapter 4, Hiranyakashipu terrorizes the universe. And this is text number 25 and 26. So just for context, this is the Devas, the demigods speaking. They've all come to Lord Vishnu. They've come to ask him for help because Hiranyakashipu has been making their lives miserable. And so they've got a prayer for help. And the Lord then responds to their request for help. And this is what he says, or these are the first couple of verses of his response. So I'll just read the Sanskrit, the translation, and Srila Prabhupada's purport. Ma bhaishta vibudha shreshta sarvesham bhadramastu va maddarshanam hi bhutanam sarvashreyopapattaye jnatame tasya dauratmyam daiteya pasadasya yat tasya shantim karishyami kalam tavat pratikshata. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The voice of the Lord vibrated as follows. Of learned persons, do not fear. I wish all good fortune to you. Become my devotees by hearing and chanting about me and offering me prayers, for these are certainly meant to award benedictions to all living entities. I know all about the activities of Hiranyakashipu and shall surely stop them very soon. Please wait patiently until that time. Purport. Sometimes people are very much eager to see God. In considering the word maddarshanam, seeing me, which is mentioned in this verse, one should note that in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Bhaktya mam abhijanati. In other words, the ability to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or to see him or talk with him depends on one's advancement in devotional service, which is called bhakti. In bhakti, there are 9 different activities: Shavanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. Because all these devotional activities are absolute, there is no fundamental difference between worshipping the deity in the temple, seeing him, and chanting his glories. Indeed, all of these are ways of seeing him, for everything done in devotional service is a means of direct contact with the Lord. The vibration of the Lord's voice appeared in the presence of all the devotees, and although the person vibrating the sound was unseen to them, they were meeting or seeing the Lord because they were offering prayers and because the vibration of the Lord was present. Contrary to the laws of the material world, there is no difference between seeing the Lord, offering prayers, and hearing the transcendental vibration. Pure devotees, therefore, are fully satisfied by glorifying the Lord. Such glorification is called kirtan. Performing kirtan and hearing the vibration of the sound Hare Krishna is actually seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. One must realize this position, and then one will be able to understand the absolute nature of the Lord's activities. So this is the Devas speaking, and they're asking for protection in a time where things are very difficult for them. Basically, the demigods are currently out of a job. They're struggling because their jobs have been taken away by Hiranyakashipu. The Bhagavatam says specifically that Hiranyakashipu is taken over the functions of Indra and Vayu and Agni in terms of rain and wind and fire. And so they're basically living off of unemployment benefits from Hiranyakashipu's cosmic system here. And it's not even as generous as the US government is. They're really struggling and they don't know what to do. And when things get really bad, they come to the Lord. So I thought it was relevant to read this verse, especially because in today's, these days we're still suffering from the effects of COVID, but also we're suffering from many of the side effects, as in something like 22 million or more Americans have applied for unemployment benefits. They're struggling financially. So that's one good reason to read this verse, because I think the Devas are in a somewhat analogous situation. And secondly, I thought that it's also nice to read this verse because we too are looking forward to Lord Nrsingadev's appearance coming up, I think on May 6th, if I'm not mistaken. This is exactly what is happening here, is that the Devas are requesting Lord Nrsingadev to appear for their protection, and we ought to as well in preparation for his arrival next month. So last time I began with a question, and this time I want to begin with a question as well. A question that has come up recently, as in a devotee friend of mine asked me. Basically, the question was quite simple. Is it okay to pray for material benefits? Should I be embarrassed to ask Krishna for something material? Maybe it's security for my job, maybe it's health, maybe it's something for my children, or whatever it might be. Is that okay? And even if it's okay, is it bad? Is it embarrassing? And this is a question that, of course, we often ask ourselves also, because there's so much of an emphasis on pure devotional service in our tradition for a good reason. Just recently, I was listening to a class by Srila Prabhupada, and he was speaking so powerfully, so intensively about this verse from the Shikshashtaka, na dhanam na janam na sundarim, that I don't want, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, I don't want anything in this world. I don't want wealth, I don't want followers, I don't want anything of pleasure in this world. All I want is your bhakti, birth after birth. And he was talking about how a devotee of Krishna wants nothing from him, and even when Krishna doesn't give something or puts him in difficulty, he never feels angry. This is the standard of devotional service. And then also a couple of days ago, I was listening to Srila Prabhupada's bhajans, and he was singing this beautiful bhajan by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Manasa Deho Geho Jo Kichu More. Now, if you haven't heard Srila Prabhupada sing this, I would encourage you to listen. It's so beautiful. He sings it with so much intensity. And when he comes to that line, Maro bhi rakho bhi jo ichha tohar nitya das pratitua adhikar. Krishna, whether you want to kill me or you want to protect me, it's up to you. I am your eternal servant, and you have full rights over me. When Prabhupada sings that Maro bhi, his voice rises so high, and the intensity of his voice becomes so powerful. You can tell Prabhupada is singing not just theoretically, it's with full intensity and full conviction. Everything Krishna, manasa, deha, geha, my body, my mind, everything, my house, it all belongs to you. So, I mean, our relationship with Krishna is not based on business. It's not, a karmakanda relationship. As long as you give me what I want, I will worship you. And so long as I'm worshiping you, you better give me what I want. That's not our relationship with Krishna. And that's very clear from our philosophy. And yet, let me submit to you this thought. And there are different ways of asking. It is true that our relationship with Krishna is a business relationship. But think about this. On the one hand, a businessman asks for, or an employee, think about the difference here between an employee asking for a raise from his or her boss and a child asking for food or for toys from a parent, a small child, say a 4 or 5-year-old. Is there a difference between these two scenarios? An employee asking for a raise from a boss and a child asking for toys or food or something else from a parent? I think most people would say definitely there's a difference between these two. Both are asking, and both are asking for material things. But what's the difference? I think the major difference is that the employee asking from the boss, basically the foundation of that is, if you don't give me that raise, then our relationship is threatened, right? It's at risk. Okay, you may still keep working, but if the relationship isn't over, at least you'll start looking for other employment opportunities. If that no happens more and more. In other words, the relationship is contingent on receiving what you're asking. Whereas in the case of a child, the situation is very different. Because yes, the child is asking, but even if the answer is no, and he or she doesn't get what they want from the parent, then even then the relationship is still there. It's still intact, at least when the child is small, right? When we grow up, things might change. But up until childhood, that relationship is still. In India, I was at my uncle and aunt's place, and one of my cousins, he was really small, just maybe 4 or 3 years old, and his mother was very angry with him. And so she was chasing him, and he was running around the dining table, and she was running around behind him. And he was, of course, a faster runner than she was, and she was having difficulty catching up. At some point, though, the child, my cousin, it was really funny because he turned around and ran the opposite direction straight to his mother, right? And from that, it was very clear that in his eyes, yes, he's scared of his mother, but where else is he going to go in the end? Even if she's upset with him, he has no other refuge. He has no other place to go. In other words, the relationship itself is not threatened when the desires are or are not satisfied. So coming to Krishna for that reason, we have to do our best to be not the employee, but to be the child. It's stressful to get pressure from an employee as a boss, and it's stressful for an employee to get pressure from a boss. But the parent-child relationship is different. Even if there is stress involved in it, which there is often, there's also a certain sweetness connected to it, which makes it nice, which makes it good. So we see here that the demigods are running to the Lord for help. And what is their prayer? Please protect our jobs. We live off of this. We live off of the oblations that come from the sacrifices. That's our salary. That's how we support ourselves. Help us and get us back our positions. So is it wrong to ask Krishna for material things? I would say the answer is no. There's nothing wrong. At the very least, at worst, we will be demigods. And that's not a bad place to be, right? The devas are wonderful, wonderful devotees. So we may not be pure devotees. The demigods, certainly, most of the demigods are not pure devotees of the Lord, but they're devas, and the Lord appreciates their service, and they serve Krishna with certain conditions, but they enjoy doing that, right? So it's not a bad place to be. And it's not something to be embarrassed about. It's also something we should advance from, but it's not something to be embarrassed about. You see, the first thing in spiritual life, the first step, the most important thing, I think, is honesty. Honesty is the very foundation of humility. We can't have humility without being honest as to who we are and where we're at. And humility is the very foundation of bhakti. It's what makes us devotees. It's the shining jewel of a devotee's quality. But in order to have humility, we have to have honesty. We have to be able to go to Krishna and say, this is where I'm at. And I recognize that this is not where I want to be, but it's still a good place to be. And I want to advance from this point. So please help me. I think here about the story of Dhruva Maharaj, right? When Dhruva Maharaj comes to, sorry, one second here. Somehow I'm looking at myself in big screen. Much rather see others. Oh, here we go. Okay. So when Dhruva Maharaj goes to the forest to get the kingdom, his Narada Muni, his spiritual master, or someone who's going to be a spiritual master, comes there, and he says that, you know, my boy, why are you so worried about this honor and dishonor? You should go back to your father's place. You should go back home. And he explains it first based on just his childhood, his you know, the fact that he's only 7 or 8 years old, and he's saying, you're a little boy and don't take things so seriously. But then he gives a philosophical argument. He says, you know, this happiness and distress, honor and dishonor, victory and defeat, these are all material things. And we have to be peaceful. We have to be equipoised and be transcendental to your position, to your environment. And so you should go back home. And Dhruva Maharaj says something very wonderful. He says, I recognize, my dear Naradaji, I recognize how valuable your instruction is. And yet, I'm not able to do it myself. This is not something that I can do. I have these desires, and I need to fulfill them. So please give me an instruction that I can follow. Show me something that I can do that will eventually get me to where I want to be. There comes a point in Dhruva Maharaj's life where these things don't matter to him. But at that point, they do. And he's very honest and he's straightforward to Narada. He says, this is where I'm at, and I'm not devaluing your instruction, right? This is the key, is that sometimes when we're not up to a certain standard, then our attempt is to justify it. We say, well, you know, anyway, no one can do that, or actually that's not really the goal, or it's really impractical, or Krishna, you know, he's speaking just to pure devotees and it's not for me. So we can give a variety of different excuses, which then, you know, pulls down the person who is giving us the instruction rather than elevating us to that platform. We pull them down and we say, no, their instruction is flawed, or it's impractical, or whatever. But Dhruva Maharaj doesn't do that, right? We see the first thing he does is he acknowledges the value of the instruction. He says, no, I know what you're saying is valuable. I know it's the right thing. I know it's the highest thing, but I'm not quite there yet. So please show me what I should do. And Prabhupada has a wonderful line in that purport. He says something that I like very much, and I'll read it for you. I'll quote it because it's very nice. He says, it is not a fact that those who have material desires are prohibited from worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the essential instruction from the life of Dhruva. He says this is the essential instruction. The question raised here, Prabhupada continues, is whether or not a person afflicted by material desires is fit to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The answer is that everyone is fit to worship him, right? So wonderful, so inclusive, so powerful. He says the answer is that everyone is fit to worship him. And on a side note, I want to say that the same is true about the spiritual master. Sometimes we get instructions from the spiritual master that we're not able to fulfill. And we might worry, is this disobeying the instruction of the spiritual master, and therefore Guru Ravagya, one of the 10 offenses? And is this going to then, as Vaishnava Aparad, is it going to destroy my spiritual life? And the answer is, well, if we take that instruction from Guru and we go back to the spiritual master and say, I know that this instruction is the best thing for me, and yet I'm just not able to do it yet. Please give me a little time. I'm going to make a plan, I'm working towards it, then there's no offense, right? There's nothing wrong with that approach. If we reject the instruction, if we turn it down, if we devalue it, then yes, there's a problem there. But if we have to spend even a lifetime in preparation to fulfill an instruction we receive, that's okay. That's being honest. And it's saying, this is what I need and I'm working towards it, right? So that's the key, is we're honest about it. And then after honesty, then we make a specific endeavor. We say, yes, I'm going to work on it. And I think I'm going to build up to that point. So honesty and asking to Krishna what we need. Okay, nothing wrong with that, so long as we're honest and we know that we have something higher to rise toward. In fact, I would say that the greater danger is not in asking Krishna for our material needs, but in not asking Krishna for our material needs. And here's why I would say that. We have these desires, right? This is why we're even considering the question. If we have these material desires and we're considering asking someone for them, it means that we certainly can't satisfy those needs ourselves, or we're confused, or we're worried, or we don't have the power to fulfill them. So we're looking for help. And in times of difficulties, unfortunately, when problems arise, we end up going as devotees to everything and everyone in the world except Krishna. In times of challenge and difficulty, devotees will turn to special mantras from the Vedas that are especially meant for curing viruses, and they'll go and find, particular rituals that are good for this purpose. They'll consult astrology and different kinds of visionaries for the future, and we'll go and we'll or on a non-religious level, we'll take shelter of the news, reading for hours and hours as to what this person is saying and what that person is saying, and this pundit and that expert and this prognosticator and that, So we go all these different places looking for different kinds of solace and shelter and protection everywhere but Krishna. And that is a greater danger than going to Krishna for it. When we go to Krishna, we know we will be protected. We know he's going to lead us down the right path. And when we go all these other places, we're missing the very point of our bhakti. You see, we've spent our entire lives preparing for this moment. Times of difficulty is what we've been preparing for as devotees. This is why we do our bhakti, is for the moment of death, right? And isn't the moment of death going to be the same thing as this, just worse, right? Just more challenging? And yet when we get an exercise, we get a test, we get an opportunity to practice, at that point we put aside Krishna and we look for shelter everywhere else. That's what we need to be worried about. Right? How can we, it would be like a doctor, right? A neurosurgeon who's been preparing, how many years you have to study for this as an undergraduate, and then postgraduate work, and you have to do your residency and your fellowship and so many things, and specialize and practice and this and that, and you work hard. And then when it comes time to do your first difficult surgery, what if the neurosurgeon were to say, okay, hold on, let me try Reiki first, right? And see if that helps. I don't want to do the surgery. Okay, maybe Reiki would help. I'm not saying it wouldn't, but you were trained for surgery, right? This is your moment. This is the patient's on the table. It's a challenge, but you've worked your whole life training for this moment. And now you're going to try Reiki instead? No, that's not what the patient's looking for, right? So we practice our whole lives to surrender to Krishna, to find those moments like we read last week or last month. Krishna Krishna Mahabaho Bhaktanam Abhayankara, from Arjuna's speaking to the Lord, or the Brajbasis speak to the Lord in this way. Krishna Krishna Mahabaho. Right? We're waiting for this moment where we can seek refuge in Krishna. And then at that moment, we turn to everyone else except Krishna. No, much better we put that aside and we say, no, Krishna is there because he's given everything we need. I mean, think about this. In the Bhagavad Gita, every time Krishna offers his protection to the devotee, every time he promises protection, what's the one thing he asks in return? He says, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshema vahamyaham. I will carry what you lack, preserve what you have. But what does he want in return for preserving what you have, carrying what you lack? Ananyas chintayanto mam. Think of me, Ananya, and no one else, right? Then he says, I will protect you at the end of Bhagavad Gita. Ma shuchaha, don't worry. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami. Ma shucha, his final promise, I will protect you. Don't fear, don't lament. What does he ask in return? Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam raja, he says. Give up all varieties of religion, all other types of shelter, and come exclusively to me. When Lord Ramachandra promises his protection to Vibhishan in the Ramayana, very nice verse quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says, how does it go? Tavasmiti chayachate abhayam sarvada tasmai dadam yetad vratam mama. He says that I promise to give this person fearlessness, abhayam sarvada tasmai, every day of their life. I promise to give them protection. But what is the only thing he asks in return for that protection, that daily protection, that constant protection, sarvada? He says, Tava asmi iti yachate, that they should come to me and say, I am yours. I belong to you. What does that mean? If I'm yours, I'm not another's. Right? I belong to you. So the thing is, we do what we have to work in this world, to be practical, right? Arjuna had to fight on a battlefield. We have our own battlefields to fight. We put in our endeavor, we do our effort. But when it comes time to pray, then there's only one person worth praying to, and that's Krishna. Only one person. And if we don't like Krishna, we can pray to Lord Shiva or to Durga, but then just pray to them, not jumping around unfaithfully from one person to another. Who's going to be inspired to help when we can't make up our minds? When we're always bahushaka hinantascha, in all these different places. For us as Vaishnavas, Krishna is it. He's our Lord. He promises full protection. And this is our moment to try that, to put that in practice, to see if it works, to use all our powers of meditation and focus and determination and enthusiasm, everything that we think we have on a day-to-day basis. This is our chance to see if we actually have it, to try it by offering our prayer at the lotus feet of Krishna and not sending our mind and our intelligence all over the place into so many different other kinds of solutions. So, how do we pray? We have material desires. It's better to go to Krishna than to anyone else for them. Acknowledging who we are, being honest about it, and being exclusive in our surrender to the Lord. How do we pray? The first thing I would want to submit is that we take advantage of what we already have and do it meaningfully. Srila Prabhupada has given us this wonderful morning program. beginning with the Gurvashtaka prayers, Samsara Davanala, followed by Nirsingha Pranam to Lord Nrsingadev, followed by Tulsi Puja, followed by Guru Puja, and in these prayers, in these daily prayers, we have everything we need to pray to the Lord and feel the Lord's protection. Think about the very first words that come out of our mouth in the morning, right? In the context of a temple life, it's 4:30 in the morning, right? We wake up, the first thing we sing, the first thing we pray, the very first line say, Samsara Dava Nalalidha Loka. This world is a forest fire. It's burning up in a fever of material existence. Whether that fever is the forest fires that rage through California every summer, or whether it's the fever of coronavirus, or whether it's the fever that comes from our own personal conflicts and difficulties, this is speaking to us, right? It's saying right away, Samsara Dava Nalalidha Loka. Tranaya Kar, and then the next line, the solution. Tranaya Karunya Ghana Ghanatvam. That we have with us, though, this cloud of mercy. Karunya Ghana Ghanatvam. This dense cloud of Karuna is there, ready to give us relief from that forest fire. Right away, our protection is there. No additional mantra is needed, right? It's present right there in that verse. Then look at the next prayer we sing in the morning. Who is that for? Lord Nrsingadev. And what does he say? Ito Nrsingha, Parato Nrsingho. Yato Yami, Tato Nrsingha. Wherever we go, inside or outside, here or there, the Lord is ready to protect. Lord Nrsingadev is everywhere, right? So immediately that protection is there. If you look at the third song that we sing, what is that? It's to Srimati Tulsi Maharani in Tulsi Puja. Je tomara sharan lohe, tara vancha purna hoye. Right? What does that mean? Je tomara sharan lohe, tara vancha purna hoye. Whoever takes shelter of you, all their desires are fulfilled. Of course, the song quickly follows and specifies what that desire is. Kripa kori korotare Vrindavanavasi. Please be merciful, have mercy on me and make me a resident of Vrindavan. But it's okay. We can say, look, so long as I'm a resident of New Jersey, dear Tulsi Maharani, I've got some problems here too. And I need help with this. It's okay, right? She is able and willing to fulfill all desires. Now, the real desire I should have is to become a resident of Vrindavan. But so long as I'm not there, in physically or in mind, I'm trying, but I have a few others. Then let's look at the fourth song we sing, right? It says, Je prasade pure sarva asha. By whose mercy, this is Guru Puja, by whose mercy, Je prasade pure sarva asha, all of our desires are fulfilled. To that spiritual master, I offer my obeisances. So one after another, each one of the songs that we sing has a prayer asking the Lord, please, all my desires, all things can be fulfilled. Right? And we don't have to go anywhere else. It's right there in the morning program that Srila Prabhupada gives us. If only we can chant it, we can sing it with meaning. That every day when we sing, we know what we're singing. We know what we're asking. We use that time. Why not? If we're going to be worried about our material necessities, what we want and what we need, and if we're going to ask others for it, why not take this opportunity to put in a prayer to the Lord? Since we're spending that time in prayer anyway. And the verses are telling us that Krishna is ready to fulfill all desires. And then there's, of course, Krishna's holy names, the japa that we do. Krishna's holy names are like a receptacle. They're like a container in which we can fill whatever is our relationship, whatever is our feeling for Krishna, and offer it to him. There's an example that I always like to give. I'll give it again here, which is that, when it came time to name our children, our oldest one, Chaitanya, we were thinking of different names. And I proposed one name in particular that my wife didn't like. And the reason for that was because she knew someone else with that name who she didn't like. And every time she said the name, every time that name would come up, there was already a bad taste in the mouth with that name, right? This happens to us a lot. If you know someone you really, really dislike with all your heart, then every time you hear their name, even on someone else, you think, oh gosh, that maybe they're just like that person. That's terrible. And something bad comes to them. On the contrary, if you have someone you love, right, and you use, and you hear their name, then all kinds of good emotions and feelings come gushing in just by the saying of that name. Right? So the point is, Krishna puts all his shaktis in his name. Namna makari bahuda nija sarva shaktis tatra arpita tatra arpita. He has invested his energies, his shaktis, his presence into his holy name. Yes? He's using it as a container to give himself to us. The holy names are non-different from him. Right? So he's investing so much into the names. When we chant Krishna's names, we can do the same. We can offer to Krishna what is our feeling towards Krishna and offer that to him through his holy names. What is our relationship? What is our desires, our fears, our connection, all the memories of the time that Krishna has protected us in our past, all the ways in which he has cared for us, all those wonderful pastimes that are our favorites. We can take that feeling and offer it into the holy name and offer it back to Krishna when we call upon him using those names. And as we go through our lives as devotees, the content increases, it deepens, it purifies, right? It becomes better and better what we can offer to Krishna. A lot of people, when they first start chanting, their main realization is, it gives me peace of mind. Kleshagni, destroys suffering. Yes, so we can offer that thankfulness to Krishna. But as we go further in Krishna consciousness, we realize there's so much more than peace of mind. Right? There's a relationship here. There's love, there's affection, there's devotion. And whatever it is, as our experiences in relation to Krishna, as they pile up and they get deeper and deeper, our chanting can become deeper and deeper and deeper and more meaningful. Right? So in this way, our chanting becomes more pure, because what we can offer to Krishna in that, just like with cooking food, right? We can cook and offer anything to Krishna. We can get a granola bar and offer it to Krishna. It's better than not offering the granola bar to Krishna. But eventually we can offer things that are nicer to Krishna, things that we cook with love, with purity. And the better we get, the better our offering is. Right? The better cooks we are, the more devotion we put into it, the more we try. The same is with our words, the same is with our sounds. In those holy names, we can offer a whole lot more to Krishna as the years go by and as our relationship with him deepens. So that's the first thing I wanted to say about praying, is that our prayers, we should take advantage of what we already have in terms of the process that Prabhupada has given us, that are wonderful ways of praying. Secondly, we can take shelter of Krishna Katha. Srimad Bhagavatam and the pastimes of Lord Krishna as a method of prayer. Again, another lecture I was listening to by Srila Prabhupada recently, he was saying, there is no devotee in the history of the world who has not had to undergo great tribulation. he was saying it with so much power that it actually made me really scared. It made me worried. Really? Me too. He was saying there's no devotee in the history of the world, something like that, he said, but it was very strong and very short. He said there's no devotee in the history of the world who has not had to go through great tribulation. And why? Well, first of all, we have to keep in mind that Krishna already warns us in advance that this world is a place of suffering, right? He gives no guarantees and promises that things are going to be easy here. He tells us well in advance. He says, look, you chose, you continue to choose at every moment to be in this material world. And I'm telling you in advance, this is what you're setting up for yourself for. Dukhalayam ashashvatam. Unlike some other religious traditions, the Vedas, the Vaishnava tradition, makes no promises of a beautiful world, right? This world is beautiful in some places, but in other ways, it's terrible. And it's so long as we choose to be involved in it, without Krishna in the center, it's going to have suffering, right? So this perspective on the world, sometimes people think that this is depressing, right? It's a cause for hopelessness. The world is a place of suffering. Well, what's the point then, right? Dukhalayam ashashvatam. It's never going to get any better. But to the contrary, I find this to be very hopeful, right? Very hopeful. One of the greatest things when you talk to people who work for the betterment of the world, whether it's the environment or it's humanitarian work, one of the biggest things that they talk about is the sense of hopelessness, of resignation that can come from seeing the enormity of the problems. It's so much. Say you're an environmentalist, right? So much to handle, so much to do everywhere you look. What do you campaign for? The Amazon, or for the oceans, or for air quality? There's so much there. It's hopeless. Are we ever going to get there? By knowing in advance that, look, this world is always going to have problems. But we're on a ship with a large hole in the hull of the ship, and there's a hole in the sails as well. They're torn. And yet, despite that, we're doing a pretty good job of getting across the sea. That's hopeful, right? Recognizing that I'm going to work for the betterment of myself and those who I care for. I'm going to work for the betterment of the world. But I don't have to make things perfect, right? If I make things better, that's okay. Enough to get the job done, right? To keep things running. I'm not going to eradicate disease, but I can help as much as I can, right? If I can make a difference, that's good, but there's no guarantee of a beautiful world. And the evidence of that, even those who are directly Krishna's friends, who are personal associates and pure devotees of the Lord, they too have to suffer. That's one reason why Krishna gives us all these examples of that kind of challenge. And the second, of course, is to show us that how a devotee can respond. In example after example in Srimad Bhagavatam, if you think about the Bhagavatam from this perspective, what is it but prayers from devotees in times of difficulty? Like Prabhupada says, there is no devotee in the Bhagavatam who has not had to undergo a challenge. And it's not just pure devotees, in case sometimes people say, well, those are all stories of pure devotees in Bhagavatam. I certainly couldn't act like Prahlad Maharaj. Well, maybe not, but maybe we could be like Dhruva. Any kind of devotee that you're looking for, you can find a story in Bhagavatam that matches that kind of devotee. Are you looking for devotees who still have material desires? Well, here are the demigods. There's Dhruva. You're looking for pure devotees as examples? How about the residents of Vrindavan and their prayer for protection during Govardhan Leela? Are we looking for physical protection? How about Gajendra? If we're looking for emotional protection, psychological protection, how about the case of Dhruva and the torment he underwent from his father? If we're looking for anything, any particular situation or context that we're looking for in terms of a devotee who needs help, any level of devotee, any kind of circumstance they're facing, physical, emotional, spiritual, it's all there. There's a story to match what we need. Krishna has given us everything in Srimad Bhagavatam. And by taking shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, we shift the focus from our own situation. One of the biggest things that people tell me during the times like this is that I can't think of anything else, right? It's there in the news 24 hours a day. And we get stuck with our phones sending us, alerts all the time about this is happening and that is happening. Another 100 people have died and this has happened. And we can't turn off and we can't stop. By focusing on Krishna Katha, we get an opportunity to recenter ourselves, to redirect ourselves, to focus on something else, something so much better, which is the problems of others. Others who are so much more expert than we are, right, at solving these problems by taking shelter of Krishna. So first, taking advantage of the prayers that we already have. Second, by taking refuge of Krishna Katha. Third, by choosing from that Krishna Katha some of our favorite prayers. Find something that you really like. Is it the prayers of Queen Kunti, or maybe of Vritrasura, or maybe of Dhruva, or maybe the prayers of the residents of Jambudvip, Hanuman's prayers? We can all have our favorites. Choose something that speaks to you, that you feel that you can say with, you can recite with intensity and with meaning and with purpose. Commit those prayers to heart in the Sanskrit if you can, or in the English if you can't do the Sanskrit. And use those. Invest those prayers with your own feeling for Krishna and recite them. We know those prayers work, right? That's the good thing about choosing prayers from Srimad Bhagavatam, is we know they work. Sometimes our prayers work, sometimes they don't work. But the prayers from Bhagavatam, they definitely work, right? Because in each of those instances, the devotee offered the prayer and they got what they wanted. If you're looking to get married, use Kardama Muni's prayers, right? They worked really well. He got a princess to marry. So there's a prayer for everything in Srimad Bhagavatam. We need a prayer for physical protection. There's a Narayana Kavacha there, right, in Srimad Bhagavatam. We don't have to go looking for other things for protection. The last thing that I wanted to mention in this is something a little bit different, right? Which is to say that so far, everything we've talked about in terms of prayer has been repeating going deeper into what we have. There's also nothing wrong. Not only is there nothing wrong, but there's something wonderful about speaking our mind to Krishna, making our own little prayers to him. Those prayers may not be perfect in their composition or perfect in their mood, but so long as they are honest and they are genuine, it's wonderful to take advantage of the opportunity to speak to Krishna every once in a while. Because we can create a prayer that works just for the moment by expressing our mind to Krishna, by telling him something that he already knows. It helps us. It doesn't teach him anything. It doesn't tell him anything that he doesn't already know, but it helps us by speaking our mind, by expressing it, by letting it go and saying, Krishna, this is what I'm facing. Please help. And we can take advantage, we can take help, we can take guidance from the prayers that we find in Srimad Bhagavatam to find a template, so to speak, for how we can do that. The Bhagavatam gives us, if you look at all the prayers that devotees make, they're all different. They're all suited to where that devotee is at themselves and what they need, what they're hoping for in terms from Krishna. But they all fit a certain pattern for effective prayers. And if we follow that pattern, we too can speak our mind to Krishna. The ability to do this is actually a great blessing of the Lord. When Dhruva saw Krishna for the first time, he was speechless. He didn't know what to say. He was a little boy. How could he say anything that was worthy of the Supreme Lord? And yet the Bhagavatam says Krishna touched him upon the head with his conch shell. And in this way, he blessed him with the knowledge and the speaking abilities to offer beautiful prayers to the Lord. So if we have a sincere desire to pray, Krishna will bless us, he will guide us, he will tell us how to ask. And we can see in Srimad Bhagavatam how this happens. Follow the examples of these great devotees, right? And speak our own mind to Krishna. In this way, we can get everything we need from the Lord, right? In times of danger or in times of happiness, we have what it takes in the practice of Krishna consciousness. If we're able to pray to Krishna like this, we can face the battlefield of life, right? And we can help others who are also struggling. I recently received a letter from a colleague of mine who we're all at home, because we're all teaching online now because the universities are closed. And I received a letter from a colleague of mine who said that he was really struggling, finding his rhythm, finding his sense of purpose and enthusiasm in these times, stuck at home and not being able to do much and suffering. And I remember this prayer, very nice, from 10th canto, Tatte nukampam susamikshamana punjana evatma kritam vipakam. Perhaps you know this verse. It says that when it comes times of difficulties, a devotee accepts those sufferings, knowing well that Krishna has a purpose behind them, right? But all that he can do is simply offer obeisances to Krishna with his heart and his words and his body, right? Body, mind, and words. That's all that a devotee can do, accepting what Krishna sends his way, right? Just offering. And so I wrote to this colleague, he's also a religious person, and I said, sometimes, all that we can do in life, when everything fails us, is we can offer prostrations. We can just prostrate ourselves before the Lord, and we can say, here I am. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do anything, but this is the best I can do, right? And we just prostrate ourselves with our body, mind, and words, offer obeisances. Krishna, here I am. And it helped. It helped him. He appreciated that very much, right? When we appreciate these prayers, when we enter a practice of prayer, we can help others who come across our path. I wanted to end with, I wanted to read you this little, a few sentences from a devotee recently I received. He's a medical doctor, an oncologist, a cancer doctor. And I asked him how things were going in the hospitals and so on. And he wrote me these few lines, which I wanted to read for you, which I thought, show how our philosophy is really wonderfully practical. He said, work is brutal. The toll on mental health is higher than the toll on physical health. We are used to the long hours. The sheer intensity and pace is unprecedented. Adding COVID to the challenge of taking care of immunocompromised cancer patients has forced me into a steep learning curve. Despite all this, the verses of the Gita have come alive in helping navigate this challenging time, not just for me as an individual physician, but also to lead my entire transplant program through this. If I hadn't come across Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, it would have been very different. So I'll just end with what I said at the beginning. These are times for which we spend our entire lives preparing. This is what we do our bhakti for these times. This is the battlefield that we've spent our whole lives waiting to fight. And it's here now, right? It's here. So let's take shelter of Krishna. Let's take this opportunity to surrender and to act in that mood of surrender, right? To pray in that mood of surrender and with complete focus, not spreading our intelligence in different ways, but really dedicating it to Krishna directly. So I will stop here and see if anyone has any questions or comments, anything they'd like to share.
Yes, if anybody has questions, please use the raise hand button and I can unmute you. This way, you can ask your question or you can type it in. Anybody have any questions or comments, please.
So Venkat Bhattaprabhu just raised his hand.
Shri Divyanam Prabhu just raised. Okay, unmute. Go ahead, Divyanam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Radhika Prabhu. Thank you very much for the wonderful talk. So Prabhuji, my question is, as you mentioned about honesty and it's okay to ask for material desires to be fulfilled from the Lord. So my question is that all the prayers of, from our morning program basically talks, what my understanding is to manage the material desires rather than asking to fulfill the material desires. Because also at places it is said that, when we ask for material things, it's like pouring the gas on fire. So it's going to blaze the fire more and more. So what exactly should be our prayers? Managing those material desires, what we have for, enjoying wealth, fame, and, opposite sex, or ask Lord to fulfill those desires? So if you can elaborate on that.
So very nice question. Thank you, Prabhu. Taking our desires to Krishna is the best way to manage them, right? So managing of our desires involves akama sarvakamo va moksha kamo dhariti tivrena bhakti yogena vijeta purusham param. That wherever we are in our lives, if we are sarvakama, we have so many desires, taking those desires to Krishna and speaking to him in the following way, right? My dear Lord, I want to be your pure devotee. I know that this material desire is not there. But it is tormenting me. Please kindly help me.
Okay.
And Krishna may fulfill that desire entirely, or he may fulfill it partially to give us a taste for us to realize, actually, no, that wasn't what we wanted, actually. Or he may reject it altogether and get rid of the desire from our heart. Okay. That's up to him, right? How he does it. With Dhruva Maharaj, after he saw Krishna, he said, I was looking for broken pieces of glass and I found the most valuable jewel, right? And so I don't want anything but your bhakti. And Krishna says, no, you stay here and rule for 10,000 years. And when you're done, you can come to me, right? So that was Krishna's plan for managing those desires. So the point is, a devotee comes to Krishna and says, this is what I have, and leaves the management part up to Krishna. He knows best how to manage whatever is our issue, right? Whether the best thing is, no, I think at this point, Prabhu, you can just restrict that desire, right? Apo divyam putraka yena sattvam. Just clench your teeth and get through this. I'm not going to give you this. You can overcome this. You're experienced enough. Maybe that's what Krishna will say. Or maybe he'll say, no, I think you need to experience this and recognize one more time that this is not going to make you happy. So try a little bit here. Or maybe Krishna will say, actually, this desire is genuinely for my service. Here, have it all. Take it, take everything you want and more. And he empowers us to do wonderful things on his behalf. So Krishna will do what's best. All we have to do is take it to him and say, you know, this is who I am.
Right.
Yoham soham natha tavam. This is who I am, Krishna. I'm yours. This is my situation. Please accept me and purify me.
Perfect. So just taking the desire to Krishna and open our hearts.
Yeah, that is our management strategy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. We have a question from Rishikesh. I'm going to mute Rishikesh. Go ahead with your question.
Hare Krishna, Radhika, please, thank you so much. This was such a wonderful and very timely class. I wanted to hear all these things. It was really, really very helpful. I just had a little, just clarification. There's a couple of devotees who even, were victim of this COVID-19, and they were senior devotees actually in UK, several of them. How do we understand Krishna's protection in this case, Prabhu? I know it's I just want to understand, how do we accept this? Because when you hear this senior devotees getting victimized by this, you get a little shaky, to
Yes. So thank you for that question, Prabhu. One thing is, I would encourage you to listen to my class from last time, because we spoke particularly on this matter actually quite extensively. But just to say in short, basically, as devotees, we have to be open to how Krishna is going to protect us. He promises that he will protect us. Sometimes that protection can take the form of physical protection, and other times it may not. And in last time's class, I gave a couple of examples of devotees, one of whom Krishna protected from a very difficult form of cancer, and another in which Krishna did not protect from that cancer physically, and that devotee passed away from bone cancer. And in both cases, for the devotee themselves, Krishna's protection was very, very strong and very evident. Here's the thing. We, looking in from the outside, cannot know how Krishna is protecting a devotee.
I see.
That is between them and Krishna, right? So we may be looking on and thinking, oh, poor thing, they're suffering so much. I wonder what Krishna is doing, right? And we might be pitying them, feeling bad for them, and getting upset at Krishna, but we don't know. While we pity that devotee may be experiencing the greatest joy of their life, their greatest moment of closeness with Krishna in that suffering, right? And we would never know. Or sometimes we know because they tell us, but other times we don't. So Krishna's protection, Krishna guarantees protection, but he doesn't guarantee physical protection. And we see this in Srimad Bhagavatam many, many times, right? The devotees do have to go through physical trouble. And it's not so much Krishna's fault. It's just the nature of this world, right? That we're all going to have to go through it at some point or another. And that's not what Krishna promises, that, oh, if you become my devotee, then you'll never have to die in this body, or you'll never fall sick or anything like that. No. What he promises is that I will always be there for you, with you. That's what he promises. And he never, ever goes back on that promise, right? And that we know by actually talking to devotees who have been through such experiences. There are hundreds and hundreds of such examples and stories, wonderful examples, where we can see how, even in Srila Prabhupada's life, right? Krishna protected him physically on the Jaladuta from those heart attacks. But later on in life, Krishna said it's time to go, and that was it. But in every moment, Krishna was there with Srila Prabhupada, right? There was no question that he was absent, right? So Krishna is never absent. He's just not sometimes He may not respond in the way that we hope he would respond. But the only way we know his protection is within that relationship between Krishna and the devotee. That it's within that relationship, and sometimes we're privy to that relationship if that devotee is kind enough or has the opportunity to share it, and other times we are not part of that. We're not privy to that relationship, and we don't know what's going on between Krishna and his devotee.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next question is from Ruchira. Ruchira, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, this is Rukmini Devi Dasi. Thank you for that wonderful class. So my question is regarding the prayer that I most often have is for clarity. And so I have two questions about it. One is whether the desire for clarity, so by clarity I mean, usually I'm asking Krishna, I don't understand what you want me to do. Like, what is it that you want me to do? So one is whether that desire is itself kind of a very subtle material desire that I want to know something, or I want to, have something within my mental grasp, which, as you said, even if I have that desire, but I would just like to know whether it is a material desire or not. And the second is, you said that there's prayers for everything in the Bhagavatam. So could you tell us some of your favorite prayers for clarity?
So first of all, let me say that I very much appreciate the question about clarity, because for me, this is also one of the most urgent prayers in times of difficulty to Krishna is telling him, look, I'm happy to do what you want me to do. I'm happy to go through what you want me to go through. Just tell me that this is what you want me to go through, right? Just tell me this is what you want me to do, and I'll do it. But so much of the time, it's not clear, right? It's not clear. Is this what Krishna wants me to do, or is this not? Is this what he wants me to experience, or is it not? And I think, well, two things. One is that I think Krishna not making his will 100% obvious is part of what he does to get us to surrender and to get us to learn to hear his voice, right? Because Krishna is there, and frankly, he's clear. He's right there in the core of our hearts, so he's closer than anyone is. So it shouldn't be difficult to hear his voice, right? It's not like we have to strain our ears to hear him because he's far away. He's right there, and his voice is clear, and yet we can't hear it, right? We don't have that clarity. And so as we search for that clarity, that process of consulting with devotees, of consulting with the spiritual master, of studying Shastra and seeing what scripture has to tell us, what Srila Prabhupada has to tell us, it's that process that helps us in advance in our Krishna consciousness. As we look, as we search and say, where is Krishna, right? Where is Krishna in this situation? And that's what we want to do as devotees, right? Is we want to look at any situation and we want to ask ourselves, where is Krishna in this situation? Where can I find him? And if we find Krishna, then we know we've succeeded, right? So he's training us like this. He's intensifying our faith. He's teaching us how to see him in everything because he is there. It's not like we have to put him, insert him into things. He's there in everything. Everything is his energy. Everything is part of Krishna. We just need to learn how to find him. So I think Krishna, that process, he could shove it in our face and say, boom, this is it. But where would our role be in that process, right? Where would our initiative, our free will be? It would be gone. We would end up being essentially forced to act according to Krishna's will. Because when Krishna wants to make it obvious, he sure can, right? He can do it, and very, very strongly. But if he were to do it, if the skies were to part and God descends from heaven on the back of Garuda, would we be able to say no? Well, I mean, the demons still say no. But typically, no. I mean, we would, as aspiring devotees, we would have to do it, right? But Krishna doesn't want to do it that way. He wants us to reach out to him as he is reaching out to us. And so that's the process of seeking that clarity. And I think bhakti is about seeking that clarity. Where is Krishna, right? Where is he in the situation? And so it's a very nice prayer. It's a wonderful prayer to ask the Lord. And in regard to that clarity, my favorite verse comes from Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 7, where Arjuna asks Krishna exactly for that, right? He says, Karpanya dosho pahata swabhava prichhami tvam dharma samudacheta. I am unclear because I am bewildered. Samudacheta. Yat shreyasyan nishchitam bruhi. That's clarity. Tell me for certain. Nishchitam bruhi. Speak, Krishna. Tell me for certain what is best for me. Nishchitam bruhitan. Shishyasteham. I'm your disciple. Surrender to you. Shadi mam tam praparna. So that's a beautiful prayer for clarity. And I personally use it often in times when I'm not sure what the best thing is to do in a particular situation, what Krishna would want me to do.
Thank you very much. Wonderful answer.
Thank you. Next question is by Venkat Bhatt-Prabhu. Venkat Bhatt-Prabhu, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for that wonderful talk. Just real quickly, first an observation and then a question. The observation, I've found, especially over the years, that as I go to Krishna with my very particular desires in prayer, and I really appreciate your highlighting our ability to put prayers into our own words as well, because that's a practice that's become really important to me. But as I do that, I found that almost inevitably, before even without planning it this way, but almost inevitably, I will have to add some kind of phrase at the end of that prayer to the effect of, well, whatever you want out of this situation, you please, my dear Lord, you please make that happen. And just somehow or other give me the wisdom to be able to recognize that. So I just wanted to share that as a kind of addition to the practice of prayer. The question is around this analogy of the child going to the parent. So as a parent myself, I know that when my child comes to me, and especially in a moment of real desperation, there's something that, obviously I don't want to see my child in pain or in desperation, but there's something very sweet and endearing about it also. And so I'm wondering, is it possible to approach Krishna with our desires, also knowing that in some way it's pleasing to him? And so some siddhir haritoshanam, that actually in coming to him with our desires, even if it's indirectly, but actually that itself is pleasing to Krishna.
Yeah, so both wonderful points. First of all, that addition at the end saying, not mine, but thy will be done. I think that helps remind us that ultimately, yes, I have a specific desire, but Krishna is the one who's going to decide, and I will be happy to live with his decision, right? So that's wonderful. Thank you for that. And then, your question again, remind me, just the last part. You're muted.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So the last part of that question is that, well, I guess it's just.
Yeah. Is there something sweet? Is there something sweet about?
Is it possible to approach Krishna like that? Yeah.
Yeah. So yes. So thank you for that. I think I know that one of the saddest things in a relationship is when you know that the other person wanted to say something to you, but they didn't, right? Or they couldn't, either because you're unapproachable or because they don't have faith in you enough to know that you would respond in a decent way, right? And so in relationships where that ability to speak your mind is not there, is actually really, really sad. It's very painful for the person who thinks, why couldn't they come and say that to me, right? So that's the negative side of what you're saying, is that I think if we're not able to come to Krishna and ask for that help, then I think, Krishna knows it anyway. He knows what we want, right? And yet the devotee couldn't manage to come to me because why, right? That's the negative side. And then on the positive side, I think you're very much right that one of the reasons that Krishna puts his devotees into difficulty is so he can be the savior, right? So he can come and he can help and show the world how much he loves his devotees. So Krishna loves to help. And there is something really sweet about a child coming. I know when my children come to me the same way as you described, and they ask for something, it's very difficult to say no at that point, especially if that desire is especially if it's said sweetly, right? If it's a temper tantrum, then forget it. The instinct is to say no. But if it's not a temper tantrum, and we're coming in a wonderful way, in an appreciative way, in a sweet way, even when that desire is not exactly, well expressed, it's just so heartwarming. And I think Krishna is pleased when devotees go to him with honesty and sincerity. Thank you very much for that point, because I think it's a very important one to note, that we're not far from making Krishna upset or sad. He knows our heart anyway. He knows what's inside. But when we're honest with him and we come to him, Krishna appreciates that as an opportunity to help us, because this is what he does best. This is why he's called Achyuta, the infallible one, because he never fails to help in situations. And if we give him an opportunity to help in our lives, Krishna is really happy by that. He's very overjoyed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from the chat from Anuttama Prabhu. Why, if it is okay for us to pray for ordinary things in a mood of dependence for the Lord, why is it that sometimes Vaishnavas are so quick to criticize others and other traditions that pray in that way? And also have saints that say there are deeper ways of devotion as we say. Is there some lesson there? It's from Anuttama Prabhu.
Yeah. So I think that's a wonderful point about criticism of others. When we see material desires, selfish material desires in others, it's very easy to see them, right? And it's always easier to see faults in others than it is to see faults in ourselves. On that point, I think it's a very good point. And to add to it, I should say that this final point that I made about speaking our own mind to Krishna, this is something that I said based on inspiration that came from watching my Christian friends pray to the Lord, right? This is one thing that Christianity does so well, is the ability to, at any time, any moment, to stand together or to stand alone and express their mind to God, right? It's something that we can learn and we can practice ourselves. Now, in connection back to Venkat Bhatta Prabhu's question, our prayer shouldn't be a temper tantrum, right? And in order to avoid our prayer from becoming a temper tantrum, there's certain ways in which we can formulate our prayer, in which we can express it nicely. And we see in Bhagavatam how that is done, right? The very first thing that devotees do in Srimad Bhagavatam when they offer prayer is they offer their obeisance to the Lord. Namaha is the first thing that happens, right? Namaha Pankajanabhaya, Namaha Pankajamaline, Namaha Pankajanetraya. Again and again, the word Namaha is used so frequently because it's, first of all, coming and saying, submitting. I'm not demanding. I'm not the boss here. You are. Please help, right? So it immediately clarifies our position in relation to the Lord. The next thing that devotees always do in prayers and offering to Krishna is that they praise the Lord. They take a moment before asking what they want to just appreciate Krishna, to just appreciate the Lord, without yourself in the picture. You are so wonderful because, right? how you are the creator, maintainer, destroyer of the material world, or how you are so beautiful and how you are so caring for your devotees. They just appreciate Krishna for who he is. Then they express gratitude for who Krishna is and the protection that he gives. Thank you, Krishna, for what you have given for me. And finally, the statement of, this is what I need from you. It shows up. So it's really, this is how we can speak to Krishna in a way that doesn't turn into a screaming and shouting match, which is not very pleasant at all, where we're just demanding something from the Lord or turning it into a business exchange, right? By following this process, by saying, okay, I'm going to offer my obeisances, I'm going to praise the Lord for who he is, and then I'm going to say, express my desire. And then to add to what Venkat Bhatta Prabhu's point to this is finally end it by saying, and it's still up to you, whatever you desire, right? But this speaking your mind thing is very much something that our friends in the Christian tradition do very nicely, right? So I think criticizing others for their material desires is a tad hypocritical when we see that we have so many desires ourselves that we need to go to Krishna for. And anyone who goes to Krishna for those desires, he says in Bhagavad Gita, such a person is Sukriti, such a person is a great soul. Other questions?
A couple more. We have a number of other devotees standing in line. I don't know how long we can keep going, but next question from Jai Draupadi Devidasi. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, very nice points. Like once I remember, I heard Aham Tavasmi when you said in the temple during Ram Navami. And it keeps reminding me. And today you said so many nice points. I was thinking one point about Srila Prabhupada, how he came in Jaladut and you cleared that. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you for your kind words.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah, the next question is from MMDD. Please go ahead.
Hi Krishna, Radhika Prabhu. This is Mahasundari Madhavi. Thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhu. I know the topic of the class today was prayers during situations of crisis, but how do we cultivate a mood that we're not waiting for a crisis to actually pray that deeply from our heart?
Yeah, it's a wonderful point, because the reason we're not able to pray to Krishna in times of crisis is because we're not able to pray to him in times where there is no crisis. Right? These things are very closely related to each other. That if we're not able to remember Krishna when things are good, it's unlikely that we'll be able to remember him when things are bad, or at least remember him with the sincerity that we need. And so this is why our daily practice is there, right? Each one of the aspects that I mentioned, our morning program, our japa, our Krishna Katha, these are all everyday activities for a devotee. And if we make them meaningful every day, then really nothing has to change in times of crisis, right? Maybe the intensity will increase as a result of the fact that it's a time of difficulty, but otherwise, this is our life, right? Prayer is our life. And so I think we can, by practicing on a daily basis, that what we're singing in the mornings, what we're singing in the evenings, what we're chanting, these are not just rituals. They're not mechanical things we have to get through. These are things that are meaningful, that if we sing and chant with that meaning, then it's likely that in times of difficulty, we're going to be able to do the same, right, for the Lord.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just wanted to thank you so much. There's still lots and lots of questions, but I don't want to take too much advantage of your kind time here. So I think perhaps we should stop here. I really want to thank all of the devotees from all of the different yatras and organizations who have joined us, and we've had close to 300 people join, which is quite amazing for this kind of sangha. I just wanted to say that your whole class just focused on how in these times we really need to re-emphasize our sadhana, right? And although everything is distracting us from that, by our ability to just focus back on our fundamentals and roots, it's really going to help us. And really, this Krishna Katha, this Sangha that we have going on every day here, I know it's helped me personally, and I've heard many other devotees saying how much it's helped them. And today in your class, you just kind of explained why that is. When we somehow connect ourselves back to Krishna Katha, then everything is just kind of works itself out. So thank you so much for that. I just take one more minute to just again tell people about the upcoming programs, classes. So tomorrow at 6 p.m., so Sunday, our class is at 6 p.m. We have His Grace Adi Gadadhar Prabhu, and he has a very wonderful topic he's going to talk about from the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Eyes Apparent Aparadh Against Advaita Acharya, Anatomy and Antidote. Okay, so the whole theme of Vaishnava Aparadh is there. Then on Monday, we have His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj again. Then Tuesday, His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu from Juhu. Wednesday, again Jayadvaita Maharaj. And then Thursday, His Grace Amarendra Prabhu. Friday, Jayadvaita Maharaj. Saturday, we have 2 classes. At 1 o'clock, we will have His Holiness Sachinandan Swami. And then at 8 o'clock next Saturday, we will have His Grace Gauranga Prabhu. So we have a really a powerful Saturday packed next. And then next Sunday, Sunday 26th, we have Her Grace Rukmini Mataji. So, and ongoing throughout the month, we have lots of wonderful speakers planned. And then as Radhika Raman Prabhu also mentioned, he will be back with us on Sunday, May the 10th, to talk about service in the time of crisis. So please join us as often as you can, whenever you can. We'd love to have you here and hear any comments and feedback you have. So thank you all so much.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Krishna, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
So very much for the
Thank
beautiful
you,
class. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
For the beautiful class, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Dandavat, all glories to Srila Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Pranam.